Welcome to the Ripple Effect Martial Arts Podcast.
Hello, Ripple Effect family. It's Master Macy here with Miss Chrissy, Miss Dana, and Miss Alison, who are all amazing parts of the Ripple Effect team. You guys get to see their smiling faces when you come into the schools, but they're also all moms of black belts. So thank you, ladies, so much for joining us and getting on here with us.
Thank you for having us.
Of course. All right, let's go ahead and jump in. I do kind of want to share a fun fact that I kind of just realized the other day. Those of you guys who have listened to some of the previous podcasts have heard from the Wade family, who were our very first students in Fort Collins. Mrs. Wade is actually going to be our program director of our brand new summer camp in Johnstown, which is very exciting. And when she was taking on that role, I put her in contact with Miss Dana, who is the program director in our summer camp and after school program in Middleburg. But what was kind of funny is that was when I realized that Miss Dana is the mom of our very first student in Florida. So it was really kind of a funny coincidence. But Miss Dana, why don't you tell us a little bit about your daughter and her training?
Okay. Her name is Jasmine. She is now she's 33 now. She started training at Middleburg Martial Arts when she was around 8. We started in the La Petite daycares where Master Lappin came and did classes before the studio was even open. And she was excited. And when they opened the studio, we transferred over to the studio. And she received she's now a 3rd degree black belt. I wish she would still be training, but life, happens. She does have 2 wonderful children, 5-year-old and a 2.5-month-old. So she's got her hands full right now. But she did come to the studio about 3 years ago, I want to say, and competed in one of the tournaments. And I believe she actually took 2nd place, but hadn't trained for like 5 to 7 years.
Yeah, she's one of those who she won't train for years, and her memory it's so like muscle memory and it's so ingrained. She's been doing it for so long. But yeah, I remember her jumping in a couple times randomly just into class and just like remembering everything so quickly. But Miss Jasmine and I actually tested for our black belts together. So that's Miss Dana's daughter. She's very exciting. She's very near and dear to my heart for sure. All right, Miss Chrissy, why don't you tell us a little bit about your kiddos and their training?
Yes, ma'am. So we started at Ripple Effect right after the Longmont School opened. My son was 3. And he desperately needed something to do. His sister was in competitive dance, and we spent a lot of time at the dance studio. And I remember being like, we have to find something for him. And we had stopped to eat at one of the restaurants over there, and we were walking by, and we walked in just to see what it was about. And we were students within a week. And then, he loved it. He was 3. He's 12 now, and in May we'll be testing for his 3rd degree black belt. He's been pretty amazing and steadfast in his training, which is super cool. And then my daughter, who is the dancer, sat on the sidelines for months and refused to admit that she liked karate. And then one day during leadership fun class, Master Wagner coaxed her out onto the mat and was like, just come do the obstacle course with us. And then, of course, she ended up earning her white belt. And then before long, she was training. And then before long, she was teaching. And then she actually ended up being the head instructor of the Longmont School for a while. So we've all spent a lot of time in the Longmont School, and it's been really cool to watch them grow their leadership capabilities from, the last 9 years.
I love it. All right, and Miss Baker. Well, Mrs. Baker, why don't you tell us about Miss Baker?
Yes, ma'am. Let's see. Well, we found Ripple Effect at a school event, and my daughter was 6, and she won a free month of lessons. And so in we went because we'd done ballet and we'd done gymnastics and we'd done soccer and all of those things that you try when you're 6. And we walked into the studio and did our first lesson. She'd had a lesson at school with Master Wagner. We did our first lesson at the studio, and she was like, yeah, this will be good. Let's do this. And her dad and I looked at her and went, are we sure? Because we're only driving one place. So here's what you get to do. And yeah, we've been there for almost 10 years now. She will be testing for her 3rd degree in May. And
So exciting.
yeah.
I love it. All right. So I think actually, all three, as you guys are saying that, and I'm like thinking about each one of your kids very, very in detail, all three of them really speak to the quote of being a black belt and not just wearing a black belt. And I think that became like, as soon as Miss Dana, as soon as you were talking about Jasmine, that's the first thing I thought of. Is she tested for 3rd degree a very, very long time ago. But just because you don't actively train doesn't mean you're not a black belt. And she very much so still is a martial artist and a black belt. And all three of your kids are in that same piece of they act like a black belt everywhere they go. Do any of you guys have any specific things that you want to share, or maybe examples that you can think of where you kind of realized, like, I don't know, I've had those with my kids, right? Those moments of like, oh yeah, they're a black belt, and outside of karate school.
Mm-hmm.
Think of anything specific?
I'll tell you, Miss Baker, Olivia, she was very quiet about being a black belt. She didn't make it a big deal. She doesn't really talk about training with her friends. They talk about all sorts of other things. But when she is confronted with something at school, she is always the first one to stand up for somebody else. She's also the first one who will say, you know what, you're not allowed to do that, and advocate for herself or her friends. And it's amazing to see that light turn on when they realize what they can actually physically do as a black belt, but what they can also mentally do as a black belt. And when she put all of that together and realized that she didn't have to use her martial arts, but she can use her martial arts and advocate for herself and really be a very strong young lady, it's pretty impressive.
I love that. I think I had an instructor one time say, we always, like in our introductory class, we tell the kids, I keep my karate in our pocket, or you hear a lot, like, you only use your martial arts for self-defense, right? You don't use it unless you're protecting yourself. I had an instructor one time who was like, no, you use your martial arts every single day in everything that you do. It's just not always physical. And so I love that. And I remember one moment with Miss Baker that really stood out to me was actually at our company Christmas party, and we were all golfing. And I don't know if you heard this, but she kind of was like, she came up to me and she was like, I'm really bad at this, and I'm really nervous to get up there and golf, but I'm not going to let my anxiety stop me, and I'm going to go do it anyways. And it was like almost like she was giving me a mat chat or a little mini TED talk, because I was like such a powerful thought process to come out of such a young woman was really, really impressive. So that was kind of one of those moments that really, as soon as I was thinking of that, like, lifelong martial artist, that's what I thought of with her. And you kind of just, what you were just saying too speaks to that. And I think, I don't know, it's pretty incredible. Okay, Miss Chrissy, what does it mean to you to be a martial arts mom? Or how is that different from being maybe a soccer mom?
It's funny, after being in the martial arts world for so long, your perception of the outside world really changes. I remember volunteering in the classrooms, and after being immersed into like the martial arts world, when you're like doing a reading group with the kids and you're like, okay, we're going to open our books, and they're like, and they like sass, and you're like, wait a minute, that's not, because it just becomes part of like your whole like identity, like, yes, ma'am, yes, sir, listening the first time, all of that stuff has just become so ingrained into our family that, like, it's kind of weird when you get outside perspective, because we very much embody martial arts through and through. And I think the coolest thing about martial arts is that the community that comes with it. You get to see the kids thrive on their own level. They have a team around them, but it's kind of an individual sport too, so you get both. But it's not just for the kids, like all of the parents are such a tight-knit community. Like if you need something, somebody in that, martial arts group is going to step up for you. And so it's like I always tell people that us walking through that door after dinner, like literally changed our lives. It led us down an entirely different path from the way we parented, to the community that we built around us, to the things that my kids did. I mean, all of it, like literally was a ripple effect. And it really did change our lives to the point that even like the other day, Ian came home, he just started track, and he really wants to do long jump. And so he went and he did long jump. And after practice, he went up to his coach and was like, what can I do better? And she's like, just keep practicing. And he came home and he was so mad because he's like, Mom, I went up to her and I really wanted feedback. Like I wanted her to give me some like tips. I didn't want her to tell me to just keep showing up. I'm going to do that anyway. Like I wanted and that was like, I was like, oh, that's like, you can really see how martial arts is not like just an activity we do. It's like really, truly who we are, even through like little things like that.
Mm-hmm. And the same thing, just he's a martial artist. Like he is a black belt through and through, right? I think you spoke about community a lot. And I think I think that's probably true for all four of us, having that community and that family. Miss Dana was helping at my wedding. Like she was there as a guest and just was like, we are so much a karate family. And I think in so many different ways that is true. And it can be just support on the sidelines, like while you're watching your kids take class. I know for me personally, like when we go to tournaments and we do things like that, like I rely so much on our martial arts community because if I'm in the middle of a ring judging, being able to, I've had like a mom braid my kid's hair and things like that. Like you just have a pretty incredible family who has like-minded goals and values and kind of a mission with their family and with their kids. And I don't know that there's many places you can find that. I think very much so. My kids played soccer and they've done piano and gymnastics. And I always, you always make friends on the sidelines, right? Like other parents, you're cheering for your kids together. And that's fantastic and that's wonderful. But it's just different. It's different when you guys are on the similar journey and your kids are like working towards this giant goal. And that your kids are like, I always joke and say blood, sweat, and tears. There's not blood, but they're like working really, really hard together. They are like overcoming huge obstacles together and they are pushing each other. Can you guys think of any examples specifically where your martial arts community really jumps out to you guys, maybe as parents or with your kids as martial artists, or a way that the community kind of supported you?
I found babysitters. I mean, she was 6 when we started. If we wanted to do anything, I found babysitters. We helped people move. We'd hear somebody on the sideline. My husband and I sat there on the sidelines like 25 hours a week, no joke, before I started working. And we knew everybody, and everybody was like, oh, the bakers will be there. We'll just ask them. And I mean, we were helping people move and we were making sure that kids got to where they needed to go. And there were carpools and yeah, that was just how it worked out. So it was great.
Oh,
I loved it.
I love it. Oh. Well, okay. So Miss Dana, can you think of a time where something Jasmine learned in class, maybe it was something from, a topic from a mat chat or a lesson that they had learned from an instructor, maybe it was like a word of the month, something from a gold meeting or a life skill or something like that, that came up at home, like maybe it was the car ride home or a moment or something that you kind of use that as a parent?
Yes. So the verbal judo really worked well for her because she was born with a cleft lip and palate and got picked on quite a bit at school. And so we talked about the verbal judo at home a lot to where she could tell the kids, she was probably 10 years old, having to explain to people what's wrong. She has a big scar on her lip and they're making fun of her, but she's turning it around to a good thing.
Mm-hmm. Good for her. Yeah. And it takes a lot sometimes to do that. And Miss Allison, you spoke of the same thing, standing up for bullies, but it's huge. And that's something, you know, there was just an incident in our community, and it was related to bullying, and just, I wish everyone had more karate in their lives.
I know. So she just was able to overcome it. And I mean, to the day now, people look at her and say, oh, what'd you do? Somebody cut you or something? She says, no, actually, I was born that way. You know, and it just rolls off. And she's done that since she was like, you know, 8 or 9 years old. And I do, you know, commend karate a lot for her being able to have the courage to come out and tell them that.
Very good. I love that. Miss Chrissy or Miss Allison, can you guys think of anything specifically, maybe? And actually, Miss Dana, I know you've heard a lot of this, because I know some of the parents use you, but I know sometimes it's as simple as like our parents will be like, do you want me to talk to Miss Dana about that? Or talk to their instructor, you know, that kind of thing. But even being able to use the character building worksheets, or the job lists, or the verbal judo program, all of these resources that we teach our kids can be such an incredible tool at home. And sometimes we forget about that, but it is something that parents should utilize and piggyback on. Miss Chrissy or Miss Allison, was there anything specific for you guys that you guys use as tools at home?
I mean, Ian was 3 when he started. So like the job lists were huge in our house to begin with, like, you know, making sure that they were picking up their toys and being kind and respectful. And it was like kind of speaking to the community again, but it was really nice to have somebody who could back up your parenting sometimes. Like, you know, you hit that wall where you're like, you've done everything. And to be able to jot a note on the back of that, and all of a sudden it becomes a mat chat. Or they incorporate it into class, or they pull your kid aside afterwards and they're like, hey, just a reminder, you know, being a black belt's more than just having that was huge for us. And it really did help us set a lot of really good, like, skills and routines and like practicing and everything, because it was all part of that checklist. And so it was just like, it was huge to help us kind of establish like a really strong family network and parenting, and have that backup. That backup is invaluable. I cannot tell you the number of times that one of the instructors have pulled aside one of my kids and given them a little reminder, or used something I mentioned in that chat. I saw Miss Alison nodding. Like she said, she's been on the sideline for years, and that type of thing is like something that you can't get anywhere else.
No, and it's so important. And every time I talk to parents, it's hard for them to understand right away that these things, the job lists, are so important, and just all of the little lessons and the yes ma'ams and the yes sirs fall into so many categories everywhere else. Because when you see your kids interact out in the world with other kids who are not martial artists, you look at them and you go, I have zero to complain about. I have a teenager who is a very strong-willed young woman, and I worry not. She gets the work done. If she's left in charge of a classroom because a teacher stepped out, teachers have come back and walked in the classroom, and she's got everybody doing push-ups because they were not paying attention the first time to what was supposed to happen. And I'm like, brilliant. Why not? And but she knows that she has to do these things because she's been doing it for so long. Those job lists were huge. Do we use the job list anymore? No. She still does everything, though. It's not, I don't have to ask her. I've never had to ask her to really do it. She just did it because she didn't want to disappoint Master Wagner. She didn't want Miss Chrissy telling her, hey, you didn't get your job list done. She wanted to do that. She wanted to be better, and she wanted to improve. So it's huge, huge tools.
And that's honestly one thing that, like, and they don't want to, they're worried about looking bad or saying that their kids aren't doing what they're supposed to. And we were always like, no, we want you to be honest. Nobody's going to ever get in trouble here but we want to help them improve. And you can't improve if you're constantly like fudging it and being like, yeah, they made their bed every day. Did they really make their bed every day? Were they really respectful for 7 days? Your kid's 11. We all know that 11-year-olds are not perfectly respectful all day, every day. And so like, it's like almost a lesson for parents too. Like, you have to be honest. And when you have that community that you know has like-minded like thinking, it's really easy to be like, man, like I've done everything at home and my teenager is not, or my preteen is not listening, not being respectful. What can we do? And sometimes having somebody come in and set some goals outside of your house that reinforces what you're doing at home, all of a sudden you see that big shift. And so like, it's like kind of a lesson in parenting too, is like, don't be afraid to ask for help. Use your community. Because we wouldn't be where we were without Ripple Effect. We wouldn't be there without those job lists, those instructors, the people who cared. And so like, I don't know, it's something that I think is really important, is to always like, you know, use the people, use your resources, and Ripple Effect has so many.
I love it. And I know we use it too. And it's, you know, last night, Master Macy almost had our 3-year-old do 5 push-ups. So the instructor piece of us goes home, ask our kids. He did it. But, okay. So, the last thing I'll ask you guys is, and I think, I talk about this sometimes when our students are looking at leadership and they're at that point where their students just qualifying for leadership and they're really talking about making the commitment for black belt. We talk a lot at that point about the community, because it does change a little bit when they're in first wave program and it's an introduction program. It's not, I think what changes is maybe that when they're in leadership, they start working with other students who are also very aligned with that long-term goal and other families. And I think that's the shift. I don't think it's anything different in anything else other than they're now in a group of people who are all on that same track that we were just talking about. And I think that community changes a lot at that point. So I'll ask each of you guys, and we'll kind of end on this. Is there any, I don't want to say advice, but maybe any insight you could give to moms who are considering leadership for their families? Because maybe that's not something that we talk about enough. We talk a lot about the benefits for the kids. But is there anything that you can say as a mom, that being in leadership and with getting your kids to black belt, something that maybe you didn't expect, that you learned, whether it's the community or anything like that you could think of for moms who are at the point where their kids are qualifying for leadership?
It's probably hands down the best decision we made. As parents, we were committing our 6-year-old to training to second degree black belt. What? No. And it's really important, but it's really important to look at your kid and say, one, I think you have this potential as well. I would love to watch you accomplish this. And that we supported her, and we still do, through all of it. Yes, there are days where she looks at us and goes, I'm done. And I'm like, are you really? She's like, no, I need Snickers. And it's like, that's okay. But it absolutely was the shift from, we're just trying things out, we're not committing to anything, we're just letting her play, to actually saying, you know, this is something that will really help you. She's an only child. We're older. We didn't know what we were doing. We relied on this community to help us raise her. I think we did a pretty great job collectively, making sure that these kids turn out okay. It's such a huge part of every day. And no, you don't have to show up every day, but it's there all the time. And I always knew there was somebody I could call. And if we were having trouble with something, if I was having trouble with something, I could call Miss Chrissy. I could sit down and be like, this is what's happening. And there was always somebody who had an answer. But because of that community, because of that leadership program, because we were there so much more just for other things, just, you know, tournaments and whatever, we had all of that support. And I never felt like I didn't have somebody I could talk to about it. I never felt like I was completely lost. not knowing what to do with this child who was running around my house and wanting to be a martial artist. So it's incredibly important.
Yeah, and I think we all now recognize, maybe people talk about it so much more, but for moms having that, and it's true for all parents. We're focusing on moms because I know it's May when this is coming out, and it's Mother's Day, and we're focusing on the moms, but it is true for all parents that having a community, having a tribe, having a support system is so incredibly important. And another thing that you mentioned in the beginning was that, like, you talked about a mindset shift. And it's true. Like, I think we focus on what changes with the kids. As soon as they put on a leadership uniform, they put on their blue uniform, they start acting different. The instructors see it. They have a different mindset, and they know, I am here for the long haul. I am making it a second degree. Let's get to work. But the parents do too. Our mindset shifts from we're trying something fun, and that's not always the case. Like, some parents come in day one, first class, they're a white belt, and the kids are working hard, and the parents are supporting them 100%. But it changes when you know that you've got this 6-year goal, or you have this, black belt goal, that kind of thing. So that was great. Thank you, Miss Alison. Miss Dana, what about you? What insight would you share with the new leadership?
I agree with everything she said. I know the benefits from Jasmine being in the leadership program was that she got to be able to use the weapons, and then she got to be able to be a teacher. And I think she has taken that with her, because now she is a VPK teacher in the, daycares. So I personally have always been a leader. And she is following right in my footsteps. And then karate has helped her to pursue it more. So she loves teaching. She loves children. Karate and kids are her passion.
That's great. She does. She took to teaching day one. She was like, it was always a passion. But I think there's a difference also in, like, the skills that they learn teaching. Like, confidence comes from success, right? So you can have a passion for teaching, but if you don't know how to teach right, or how to lead a group, or how to get control of a classroom, you can feel like you're not good at it. And I think that's another piece. So yeah, that's amazing. Thank you, Miss Dana. All right. And Miss Chrissy.
I would say 2 pieces. One, the importance of commitment as a parent really shines in leadership. I cannot tell you the number of people who told me I was crazy when I signed my newly 4-year-old up to get his second degree black belt. What was I doing? How could I make that commitment? And I said, you know what? They believe in him. I need to believe in him too. And I cannot tell you the number of times during our journey that I needed somebody to remind me that, like, as a parent, you naturally always believe in your child, but you also sometimes see things and go, I don't know if they're going to be able to make that. Like, that feels like a pretty lofty goal, or, can you worry? Like, you don't want to see them fail. But in martial arts and through the leadership program, they do fail sometimes, but you get to see the other side of it. You get to see how resilient they become. And that is a lesson as a parent that, like, I really value, because the number of times that Ian cried through prep cycle and sobbed and wanted to quit, and then turned around and did 100 push-ups the next day because it was part of his homework, there's not anything that can stop that kid now. And it's the same thing for Addison. Like, there is literally, they made a commitment, they completed their commitment, they trained all the way to second degree black belt, and both of them are on their way to third degree black belt. They have had more challenges than one person can imagine, and they have turned around and been so incredibly resilient every single time. And that is what that is the leadership program. Like, without that, I don't know that they would have been able to stand back up after some of the things that have happened. And it's like never even a question. Like, it's just like, okay, that was really hard, and tomorrow I'm going to do it again. And to have that resilience and, like, see how that changes people. Yeah, it's a big commitment. Yeah, your 3-year-old, 4-year-old, 5-year-old really can't make that commitment. But as parents, we can make that commitment, and we can help our kids learn what it looks like to make a commitment, to follow through, to have hard days and have the successes. Every single black belt test, you can ask Miss Alison and anybody else, I cry the entire day on Sunday. as every single one of their kids get their black belt, because they're all my kids in the end. Like, I spend so much time with them and their families that every single one of them means just as much as when my kid got their black belt tied on. And that you do not get anywhere else. And for a parent to have that village, to have that community, to have that lesson, and to have that support when things are hard and when you have to teach them resilience, is like, it makes the leadership program 100% worth it. Like, I would pay it over and over and over and over again. And if I could figure out a way, I would make sure that every kid in America could do leadership with Ripple Effect, because I do really think that it changes the kids and the world for like the best possible scenario.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. I think you hit a huge lesson with overcoming failure. And that's something that is a challenge for every adult. And I think for everyone, you know, I think as parents, it is something too, for us, maybe a little bit different, because we know what the Ripple Effect martial arts program does for that and what martial arts does for that. But I think for a lot of parents, it's one of those things that they look at and they're like, I hope I can teach my kids that. And they're just kind of like wishing and hoping that when they get to be an adult, they know how to stick things through, and they know the value of commitment, and they know not to give up on their dreams and on their passions and when things get tough. And I think the other side of that, you know, when I talk to the students, I like to share a lot of examples, and I'm not going to go through them today, but look up any really, really successful person that you admire, and I guarantee you're going to find a laundry list of times that they failed. And the difference is they didn't give up. They got right back up and they kept going. And that lesson is very, very hard to just explain. It does take years of practice to build, right? It takes years of all of our kids, all 4 of ours, they have failed. In martial arts alone, they have had different days where they failed. I remember Tegan, she's 10 now, and she's getting ready for her black belt test. But I remember her blue belt test, and she, very last minute, started working really, really hard, and then had some days where she didn't want to practice, didn't feel like it, didn't whatever. And I was like, you know, if you're not going to be ready to test, and she didn't get to test. And it was very hard for her. It was very, there were tears, there were all the emotions. But what happened is she worked 10 times harder for the next test and ended up getting a best tester on the next test. And I think that lesson is not something that I could never replicate that at home. Like, that experience is not something that we can just create. And it doesn't happen in a lot of other places. Like, there are lessons, right? You don't study for a spelling test, you don't pass, but it's not something that they get to tangibly see long-term the way that martial arts does, right? Or they fail a test, or all of those pieces, but overcoming failure and the lessons that they can learn through Ripple Effect martial arts and most martial arts programs is something that you just cannot replicate. So on that note, thank you ladies so much for talking with me today. Happy Mother's Day to you and all the moms listening. And thank you for not only being amazing mom to wonderful kids, but also being moms to a lot of kids, being the karate mom for a lot of kids in the karate school, because all 3 of you very much so are. So thank you for all that you guys do. And
thank you for listening to the Ripple Effect Martial Arts Podcast. Find podcasts and more at rippleeffectmartialarts.com.